welcome back to Under Baobab Skies. Let us settle once more in the deep, generous shadow of the old baobab. Its branches are like arteries against the night, holding up the very dome of the world. Above us, the stars are not merely scattered, they are carefully placed, a great ancestral assembly watching in silent council. The air is still, carrying the distant scent of wood smoke and the rich, sleeping earth. It's a quiet moment, a sacred space we share, and tonight our gaze turns upward, not just to look, but to listen, to feel the immense weight of history that hangs in the darkness between the stars. Tonight we turn our faces upwards, not to count, but to remember, to listen for an echo of a time when the sky was not a passive tapestry, but an active, speaking presence. A time when kings, draped in the weight of leopard skins and gold, would look up from their earthly thrones and feel their power shrink to a speck of dust before the true rulers of the cosmos. Our story is of fire in the heavens, of the great, hair-tailed wanderers that would appear without warning, painting a streak of icy fear across the hearts of empires. The comet, to us now, it is a spectacle of physics, a dirty snowball sailing on a long, elliptical sigh around the sun. We track its orbit, predict its return, and marvel at its icy tail. But to the kings of Kush, of Mali, of Songhai, of Great Zimbabwe, it was a royal memo, written in flames, sent directly from the universe itself. Imagine you are a sentry on the walls of a great city, perhaps Gao or Meru. The night is routine, the sounds familiar. Suddenly, a new star appears. But this one is different. It bleeds across the familiar constellations, a luminous tear on the cheek of the night sky. Panic is a cold stone in your stomach. Is it a blessing or a curse? A divine proclamation or a terrible omen? This was the reality. A single celestial event could halt wars and start them. It could dictate the planting of crops and the naming of heirs. It was a celestial envoy so powerful that its message was debated by astronomer priests in sand-floored chambers before being whispered, with trembling lips, into the ear of a sleeping monarch at dawn. Its arrival was not an astronomical curiosity. It was a political crisis, a spiritual emergency, and a profound social phenomenon all at once. Over the course of our journey, we will walk the quiet, tense corridors of royal observatories where polished stone and carefully aligned monoliths were the lenses to divinity. These were not places of simple superstition, but centers of meticulous observation, where generations of skywatchers recorded the movements of the heavens with astonishing precision. We will sit beside scribes in the famed libraries of Timbuktu as they diligently married the mathematics of a comet. S-path to the price of grain in the market, seeking the patterns in God's will. Trying to decipher the complex language of the cosmos, they were searching for a grand, unified theory of everything, connecting the divine to the daily, the celestial to the commercial. We will feel the crushing grief of a king who saw his son's death not as a random tragedy, but as a sentence passed by a fiery judge in the sky. To him, the comet was the harbinger, the executioner's signature written across the heavens. His personal loss was inextricably linked to this cosmic sign, a pain both private and profoundly public. And then, in a beautiful reconciliation across the centuries, we will witness how the ancient stories kept by Griatsta, oral historians, are held up to the eye of a modern telescope, and found to be a perfect match. We LLC how oral traditions that spoke of a star with long hair that appeared before a great famine aligned perfectly with modern astronomical calculations of a comet's return. This is not a tale of primitive fear. It is a story of profound observation, of a relentless human need to find meaning, to connect the small dramas of the earth to the grand narratives of the cosmos. It is about the awe, that lies at the very root of science, and the wisdom that lives in the space between a star S-light and a storyteller S-word. It's about understanding that our ancestors were not simply scared of the dark. They were engaged in a deep, meaningful dialogue with it. They were scientists, philosophers, and poets, all looking at the same sky we see today, asking the same fundamental questions. Where do we come from? Why are we here? And what does it all mean? So, breathe deeply. Let the immensity of this African night settle round you. The same stars that shone on those anxious kings shine on us now. Their light has traveled for thousands of years to reach us, carrying with it the echoes of their questions, their fears, and their awe. Let us listen, together, for the memory of their fire. You are now under Baobab skies. Thank you for joining us. If you feel a connection to these stories, consider subscribing to our channel for more journeys into the heart of history. The kingdom sleeps. The great city of Meru, the very heart of Kush, is a landscape of low mud brick roofs and silent courtyards all silvered by a moon that's just a mere sliver, a faint clipping of a fingernail in the black sky. The intense heat of the day has finally bled away into the desert sand, leaving a cool, empty clarity in the night air. The only light beyond the moon's shy and subtle gift comes from the torches that flicker eternally before the great temple of Amun, and from a single, shielded oil lamp burning steadily on the highest platform of the Royal Observatory. Here, in this high and lonely place, the world reduces itself to just two things: the vast, black dome of the heavens above and the Watcher below. His name is McConnon. He is young for his post, very young. His appointment is a testament not to his age, but to his eyes that could spot a hawk circling at a distance where other, more experienced men saw only a meaningless speck. His tools are simple, but they are sacred. A shallow bowl of perfectly still water to gauge the horizon's truth. Star charts painted on cured calf skin that have been passed down through generations, and the eye of the heavens a long cylindrical tube of polished obsidian, as black as the space between the stars, cool and heavy in his hands. His night watch is a form of meditation. He has learned to breathe in time with his slow, deliberate scans of the constellations, the crocodile, the great herd, the three maidens. With practiced ease, he notes the steady, predictable journey of the wanderers. Those planets, his forebears, named after the gods themselves. All is as it should be. The sky is a perfect clockwork of divine order, a map of eternity that he knows by heart. Tonight is no different from 1,000 nights before. But then, it is in the region of the sky, near the fiery red heart of the scorpion, his sweep pauses. A faint, gauzy smudge, a wisp of celestial mist where no mist should ever be. He lowers the tube, blinks, and rubs his eyes with the heels of his palms, a forbidden gesture, a small act of sacrilege born of doubt. He looks again, with his naked eye. Nothing. Just the familiar pattern of stars against the deep velvet black. He raises the eye of the heavens once more. The smudge is still there. It's undeniable. This is not a star. Stars are sharp, clear points of light, like pinpricks in the fabric of night. This is a smear, a tiny, ethereal cloud caught in the infinite dark, an imperfection in the divine tapestry. A coldness that has nothing to do with the night air spreads from his chest out to his fingertips. The meticulously memorized charts in his mind, a library of celestial knowledge, offer no name, no label for this. This is a new thing. And in the silent, powerful language of the sky, a new thing is never trivial. It is a word never before spoken by the gods. This moment of discovery isn't one of elation or excitement. There's no triumphant shout, no rush of adrenaline. It is a moment of profound, isolating dread. McConnon is not an explorer finding new, uncharted land. He is a sentinel, a lone watchman spotting an unknown and potentially hostile ship on a vast, dark sea of night. And below him, the entire kingdom, his family, his friends, his queen is sleeping, vulnerable and utterly unaware. Protocol is everything. His training takes over where his courage falters. He does not cry out. He does not run to wake the high priest. He takes a deep, steadying breath that does little to actually steady him. With deliberate, careful slowness, he places the precious obsidian tube back into its cradle of embroidered leather. From a pouch at his hip, he takes a stick of charred wood and a small, smooth piece of limestone, a scribe's tablet. In the flickering lamplight, with a hand he forces to be steady, he makes a tiny, precise mark on the stoner familiar dot for Antares, the scorpion's heart, and then a faint, hesitant circle for the smudge. He notes the angle of the hour star, marking the time. He notes the quality of the air, the direction of the faint breeze. He has become a scribe of the unknown, the first witness to something that has no name. The weight of the next few hours of the dawn report he must deliver to the priests and the queen settles on his young shoulders like a cloak of lead. The panic is silent, but it is there. It's not in noise, but in the frantic, disciplined racing of his mind. He's trying to calculate the movement of something that hasn't yet moved. He's trying to interpret a message written in a language of pure light and mystery, a language he thought he knew so well. Let's just pause for a moment and stay with him on that lonely platform. In this instant, the torchlight from the mighty temple of Ammon down below seemed suddenly feeble, inadequate. The familiar stars, his lifelong companions, feel like distant, uncaring relatives, looking on without interest. And between them, a new, silent word hangs in the void. A question mark aimed at the heart of his world. And a young man, a boy really, holds the terrible, crushing responsibility of being the first to read it. The city sleeps on, unaware that the sky, their very definition of certainty and eternity, has just changed forever. The air in the narrow stairwell is cool and still, a welcome escape from the sun-scorched streets of the city. McConnon descends, his steps muffled by the thick stone. He clutches a limestone tablet to his chest, the weight of it both a burden and a secret. This isn't some grand, singular tower reaching for the heavens. No, the observatory is a complex of chambers, burrowed deep, built with massive walls to silence the noise of the world and keep the dais' oppressive heat at bay. He makes his way to the chamber of measurement, a room bathed in the soft, flickering glow of 3 low oil lamps. Their restless shadows dance across walls painted with zodiacs, their colors faded by time, their stories whispered by the generations of watchers who came before. McConnon is not alone. He walks to the center of the room, to a table inlaid with ivory, and places his marked limestone upon it. This is the signal. Soon, the soft shuffling of sandals on stone announces the arrival of others. The watchers from the lesser platforms enter, their faces etched with a grim solemnity in the dancing light. One by one, they file in, their white robes stark against the chamber's darkness, and then he appears, the master of the hours, old Annan. His back is a permanent arch, bent from a lifetime of gazing upwards. His eyes, pale and clouded, seem to look right through you, as if he's perpetually searching for the hidden patterns that stitch the world together. No words are exchanged. The senior astronomer priests, men who have dedicated their lives to the celestial clockwork, gather around the chamber's most sacred instrument, the sand table. It's a large, rectangular basin filled to the brim with fine, dark sand, leveled to a perfect, glassy smoothness. Along its edges, precisely placed ivory markers stand in for the fixed stars and the known wanderers. Those planets they call the wanderers for their seemingly erratic paths. Thin brass rods, strung with colored beads, represent the planets themselves, each one a tiny world in their calculative cosmos. This sand table is more than just a tool. It is their universe in miniature, a sacred space where the heavens are brought down to earth. Annan moves to the central table and picks up McConnon's limestone tablet. His old, gnarled fingers, surprisingly nimble, trace the fresh mark scratched into its surface. He gives a nod, so slight it's almost imperceptible. It is a confirmation the sighting is real. Now, the true work begins. The profound silence of the chamber is broken only by the soft, rhythmic scrape of brass rods being moved across the sand, the quiet click of beads sliding along their tracks. A junior priest steps forward, holding calibrated strings and a sighting staff. With practiced movements, he translates McConnon's raw observation from the tablet into a precise position on the sand table. He then takes a tiny piece of luminous oyster shell, a shimmering fragment meant to represent the newcomer in the sky, and places it with infinite care onto the dark sand. The hours begin to bleed into one another. The lamps are refilled, their wicks trimmed, the shadows continuing their silent, eternal dance. McConnon is sent back to the roof, back to the open air and the vast, star-dusted canopy. He returns with a new mark on a fresh tablet. The process repeats. The junior priest translates the new coordinates. The luminous shell is moved. Again and then again. Slowly, painstakingly, a trajectory begins to emerge from the scattered points. A path is being drawn across their sandy cosmos, a line etched not by a stylus, but by the relentless passage of time and the patient observation of these dedicated men. This is the true heart of the tension, the source of the unspoken panic that hangs heavy in the air. It's not a loud, frantic chaos, but an intense, silent friction of minds grinding against an impossible problem. They are not yet asking the great question of asterisk, what it means, asterisk. First, they must understand, asterisk, what it is doing, asterisk. Is its path curving? And if so, by how much? Is it growing brighter as it travels? Or is its light fading? Towards which of the great constellations is it headed? Each new plot point on the sand is like a syllable in a sentence they are desperately trying to read before it is fully written. A celestial message that could hold the fate of their entire civilization. It aims for the field of reeds. One of the elder priests murmurs, his voice a dry whisper. His finger hovers over a specific patch of sand, a section representing a fertile constellation. One inextricably linked with the life-giving annual flood of the Nile. No, another priest counters, his hand steady as he adjusts a colored bead on its rod. See the arc? It will pass the herd, but its tail will sweep across the crown of the south. A collective, silent breath is held. The crown of the south is not just any group of stars. It is the king's own birth constellation, a celestial emblem of his divine authority. The implications of these two possibilities are tectonic, world-shaking. A comet touching the field of reeds could prophesize a failed flood, a season of drought and famine that would bring the kingdom to its knees. But a comet's tail brushing the king's crown, that speaks of something far more direct, far more dangerous. It could foretell a challenge to his divine right to rule, a sudden illness, or even a violent coup from within his own court. In this moment, they are no longer just astronomers, men of science and numbers. They have become royal translators, interpreters of a divine language. The message they are deciphering could destabilize an entire kingdom, unraveling the very fabric of their society. Let's just pause here for a moment and stand with them in that lamplit room. Watch the slow, deliberate dance of the beads on their brass rods. See the tiny, shimmering shell inching its way across the dark, silent sand. This is their model of the universe, and within it, they believe the fate of men is being weighed and measured. Here, the cold, objective beauty of mathematics collides head-on with the hot, visceral, human fear of the unknown. The sand itself holds no answers. It only reveals a path, a trajectory. The meaning of that path, the story it tells, must be imagined, debated, and finally agreed upon. And then, that meaning, that terrifying prophecy, must be carried like a live, glowing coal from a fire, and placed into the hands of the one man who must act upon it, the king. The weight of the heavens, it seems, rests not on the shoulders of a god, but on the calculations of these men in a dark room, staring at a box of sand. The oyster shell on the sand table has found its inevitable path. The trajectory is agreed upon, drawn and redrawn with a fingertip until a groove lies in the dark grains. It is a line of fate. The conference of astronomers now falls into a deeper, more terrible silence. The phase of calculation is over. The phase of interpretation, of politics, of prophecy begins. Old Anon dismisses the junior priests with a wave of his desiccated hand. Only the 5 most senior remain, their faces carved by lamp flame into masks of profound responsibility. They do not look at the sand table now. They look at each other. The question hangs in the smoky air, unspoken but deafening. What do we tell the king? This is not a question of truth. The truth is a smear of light and a line in the sand. The question is one of translation. The cosmos has sent a raw, powerful signal. It is their sacred duty to encode it into the language of statecraft, a language that must balance divine warning with royal stability. They must take the cold, hard data of orbital mechanics and transform it into a story that can guide a kingdom. One of them, a man whose voice is a low rumble, speaks first. It is a cleanser, he suggests. It sweeps through the crown of the south, brushing away impurity. We can advise a purification of the court, new offerings at the necropolis. It is a warning, yes, but a corrective one. He sees the celestial event as a celestial broom, a divine sign to clean house. The implications are primarily internal, rooting out corruption, performing rituals, and reinforcing spiritual order. It's a safe interpretation, one that turns the kingdom's gaze inward, focusing on piety and domestic affairs. It suggests a problem that can be solved with prayer and sacrifice. Another shakes his head, his prayer beads clicking softly in the quiet room. You see a broom. I see a spear. His tone is sharper, more urgent. Its path is direct. Its light is growing. It does not brush, it points. It points at the king's star. This is a challenge. An enemy, perhaps unseen, is drawing power from this celestial fire. We must advise increased patrols on the northern frontier, a review of all alliances. His interpretation is one of external threat. The comet is not a spiritual warning, but a military omen. It points to a rival, an impending conflict. This path leads to militarization, suspicion, and a kingdom bracing for war. The fear of a foreign enemy is a powerful tool, but a dangerous one. The debate is quiet, but fierce. Each man's interpretation is colored by his own fears, his loyalty, his reading of the kingdom's health. To call it a cleanser is to risk seeming blind to a direct threat, to be accused of complacency if an enemy does attack. But to call it a spear is to risk sending the kingdom into a paranoia that could be its own undoing, wasting resources on phantom enemies and creating instability where there was none. They are not just reading stars. They are writing the first draft of the kingdom's next chapter. Their choice of metaphor will have real-world consequences, rippling through every level of society, from the soldier on the border to the farmer in the field. All this time, old Anon listens. his eyes closed. He is the final cipher. As the head astronomer, his word carries the ultimate weight. He must take their words, the data in the sand, and the political temperature of the court, and distill it all into a single, potent message. A message that can be delivered in the time it takes for the king to break his morning bread. His choice of metaphor will set the course of policy for months, perhaps years. He thinks of the young king, proud, impulsive, sitting on a throne still warm from his father. A call for a spear might appeal to his youthful desire for glory, pushing him toward a rash war. A call for a cleanser might be dismissed as priestly hand-wringing. Anan also thinks of the people whose lives are ruled by the predictable rhythm of the Nile's flood, not by a chaotic wanderer in the deep sky. Their stability is paramount. The message must be powerful enough to be taken seriously, but flexible enough to avoid catastrophe. Finally, he speaks. His voice is the sound of ancient parchment rubbing against stone, a sound that commands immediate silence. We will not speak of spears. We will not speak of brooms. He opens his eyes, and they seem to hold the light of the very stars they study. His gaze falls upon the oyster shell, the tiny object representing the immense cosmic traveler. We will speak of a messenger. The word hangs in the air, its brilliance slowly dawning on the others. A royal messenger from the realm of the ancestors, Anan continues. It travels with great speed and light, carrying news. Its path near the king's star means the message is for his ears alone. The news may be urgent. It may require contemplation and change. There is a collective, almost imperceptible exhale in the room. The tension breaks. It is a masterstroke of political and religious genius. The messenger metaphor is perfect. It conveys urgency. Messengers travel with speed without declaring war. It elevates the king, making him the sole recipient of a divine communication, which will appeal to his ego. But it also places a heavy burden of responsibility squarely on his shoulders. He must decipher the message and act upon it. The contemplation and change part is the key. It grants the council and Anan himself the power to guide the king in interpreting this message, whether it means reforming the tax code, strengthening a particular alliance, or performing a specific ritual. The metaphor is ambiguous enough to be safe, yet potent enough to be heeded. It's not a threat to be fought or a stain to be cleansed. It's information to be processed. It turns a potential crisis into an opportunity for wise governance, guided, of course, by the king's most trusted astronomical advisors. Let's pause for a moment here, in this quiet chamber, as the first faint stain of dawn bleeds into the eastern sky, painting the horizon in shades of violet and grey. The decision is made. The metaphor is chosen. The story is ready. Anan rises, his old joints protesting the long night's vigil. He will wash his face and hands, put on his finest linen vestments, the uniform of his sacred office. Soon he will be led into the royal chambers as the king awakens. He will not deliver an astronomical fact about a ball of ice and rock on an elliptical orbit. He will deliver a story, a powerful, carefully constructed story about a messenger of fire, sent from the ancestors to the living king. And with that story, he will set in motion a chain of human actions. Edicts will be written, rituals will be performed, fears will be stoked, and hopes will be kindled. All of this a reaction not to the comet itself, but to the idea of the comet. The celestial body, indifferent and silent, continues on its billion-year journey, utterly unaware of the drama unfolding on the small, blue-green world it is passing. But here, on this tiny world, a man is about to shape history with a single, carefully chosen word. The night's work is done. The silent panic of the unknown has crystallized into a single, manageable sentence. The sky has spoken. Now, the earth must reply. Centuries drift by like dust carried on the harmattan wind. The once mighty kingdoms of the Nile, with their keen-eyed priests and their obsidian tubes, have given way to the sprawling empires of the Sahel. The polished volcanic glass, once a tool for divining the fate of kings, is now carefully stored away, a relic of a bygone era. But the watch on the heavens, the ceaseless observation of the celestial dance, does not cease. It simply changes its form, its script evolving from carvings on stone tablets to intricate calligraphy on vellum, from whispered counsel in a pharaoh's ear to inked scholarship in a bustling library. We find ourselves now transported to the heart of the 16th century, stepping into a room that smells of ancient dust, rich ink, and profound intellect. This is the scriptorium of the legendary Sankar Madrasa in Timbuktu, a beacon of learning in West Africa. Here, a comet is not just a terrifying omen for a king, a harbinger of doom or fortune. It is something more. It is a data point, a single entry in God's grand and intricate ledger. The scholar-scribe at work is named Al-Mustafa. He is a man of quiet focus and deep knowledge. Before him lies a large, beautifully bound manuscript, its pages made from creamy, supple goatskin. His pen is not of metal, but a simple reed, sharpened to a precise point. His ink is a deep, lustrous black, a carefully prepared mixture of gallnuts and gum Arabic. He is not a prophet, claiming to see the future. He is a recorder, a chronicler. His duty is not to interpret omens, but to observe and document the pattern. Imagine the scene. The air in the scriptorium is still, thick with the silent hum of scholarly pursuit. An intricate brass lantern casts a warm, focused glow upon Al-Mustafa's desk, which is piled high with leather-bound manuscripts and small, earthen pots of ink. His hand moves with a practiced, meticulous grace, his reed pen whispering across the page as he inscribes elegant Arabic script. This is not a place of frantic prophecy, but of calm, dedicated study. News has traveled far to reach Timbuktu, carried by the slow, steady pace of the great salt and gold caravans that crisscross the Sahara. A comet has been seen blazing in the night sky over the vast Songhai Empire. It is Al-Mustafa's task to enter this celestial event into a very special book, the Kitab al-Najm al-Sayyara, which translates to the Book of the Wandering Stars. He dips his pen into the pot of black ink, the liquid clinging to the sharpened reed. In a neat, vertical column, he begins to record the celestial facts with scientific precision. The script is beautiful, flowing Arabic. He notes the date, not just according to the Islamic calendar, but also the local calendar, ensuring the event is anchored firmly in its time and place. He records the time of the first sighting, as reported by reliable witnesses. He documents the constellation from which the comet appeared to emerge, its position among the familiar fixed stars. He describes its appearance in meticulous detail. The color of its nucleus, he writes, was like a dull ember, not bright and fiery, but glowing with a subdued intensity. He notes the direction and the apparent length of its tail, stretching toward the west, spanning 10 handwidths against the canvas of the night sky. This is pure, empirical observation. A modern astronomer would recognize the methodical nature of this work. It is data collection, plain and simple. But he does not stop there. And this is where the true genius of Timbuktu's scholarship unfolds, revealing a worldview that is both deeply spiritual and profoundly systematic. On the very same page, in parallel columns, right next to the astronomical data, Al-Mustafa begins to inscribe the earthly corollaries, the events happening down here in the world of human affairs. In the column he has labeled Al-Harth, meaning agriculture. He makes a new entry. He notes, The millet yield in the fertile region of Jen is reported down by 1/3 from the previous season. The price of a sack of grain has risen accordingly. This isn't speculation. It's an economic fact. A piece of market data gathered from the same caravans that brought news of the comet. Next, he moves to the column for Alsaia, which means health. Here, he writes, a mild fever travels with the salt caravans from the north. No deaths have been reported within the city of Timbuktu. This is a public health update, a report on the movement of disease, noted with the same dispassionate clarity as the comet's tail. Finally, he turns to the column for Alsiasa, or politics. He records, the Askia the Emperor is in good health. His son has safely returned from the long pilgrimage to Mecca. And another piece of political intelligence. Tribute from the vassal state of Bendigu is 2 months late. To a modern eye, accustomed to specialized fields of knowledge, this might seem like a chaotic jumble of unrelated facts. Astronomy, economics, epidemiology, and political science, all sharing the same page. What could a comet possibly have to do with the price of millet or a late tribute payment? But to our Mustafa and his colleagues at the Sanka Madrasa, this was not chaos. It was the very picture of order. It was a unified field of knowledge. They were operating on a fundamental and beautiful premise, that the cosmos and the Earth are not separate domains. They are in a constant, resonant conversation. They are two parts of a single, interconnected system. A disturbance in one register, like the sudden appearance of a wandering star, must have echoes and reverberations in the others. It's crucial to understand their thinking here. Al-Mustafa did not believe the comet was directly causing the price of millet to rise, or making a vassal king delay his tribute. That's simple superstition. Their philosophy was far more sophisticated. For them, the comet, the poor harvest, the traveling sickness, and the delayed tribute were all simultaneous expressions, different symptoms of a deeper, underlying state of cosmic and social balance or imbalance. They were all threads in the same grand tapestry, and the appearance of one bright, unusual thread demanded an examination of all the others around it. What Al-Mustafa is doing is revolutionary. He is creating a hyperlink across realms. He is building a multi-layered database on paper. Future scholars, leafing through this very manuscript decades or even centuries later, will be able to draw lines of correlation. They can ask new questions based on this accumulated data. Does a green-tailed comet, for example, consistently align with years of good rain and bountiful harvests? Does a comet appearing in the constellation they identified as the Warrior often precede a major military campaign? The data itself is sacred, because they believe that within its patterns, within these subtle correlations between heaven and earth, one might just be able to discern the subtle handwriting of the divine will. It's an act of faith expressed through rigorous scholarship. So let's just pause for a moment and listen. Listen to the quiet, rhythmic scratch of the reed pen on the goatskin page. In this scholarly sanctuary, there is no panic about the fiery visitor in the sky. There is no terror. There is only diligent, devout curiosity. Through this act of meticulous record-keeping, the comet has been transformed. It has been demystified from a terrifying, unpredictable memo from the gods, sent only for a king, into a single, understandable entry in a vast, interconnected database for all learned people to study. Fear has been tempered not by ignoring the unknown, but by facing it, observing it, and recording it. The vast and terrifying unknown is being made knowable, one careful, inked column at a time. This is the power of knowledge, a light of reason burning brightly in the heart of 16th century Timbuktu, in the sun-baked heart of the Sahel, nestled by the winding Niger River, stands a city of legend, Timbuktu. For centuries, it has been a beacon of scholarship, a sanctuary for knowledge in a world often shrouded in darkness. Here, within its sand-swept walls, generations of ink have dried on the pages of priceless manuscripts. These texts, bound in rich leather and carefully treated with fragrant oils to defy the harsh desert air, are stored in chests of aromatic cedarwood. They are a library of the heavens, a collection of astronomical observations, star charts, and celestial omens gathered over hundreds of years. They wait, silent and patient, for the right mind to unlock their deepest secrets. A full century after the celebrated scholar Al-Mustafa first catalogued the stars over this great city, a new kind of intellect arrives. He is Ahmad bin Musa, a scholar hailing from the oasis of Chingati, a place known for its deep wells and even deeper faith. Ahmed's own faith is as profound as the water source of his homeland, but his intellect is something different. It is restless, systematic, and possesses an insatiable hunger for causality, for the why behind the what. He doesn't come to Timbuktu to simply venerate the ancient texts, to accept their wisdom without question. He comes to interrogate them. Imagine the scene in a cool, subterranean library. Shielded from the relentless African sun, Ahmed unrolls a vast, intricate carpet. Across its woven patterns, he carefully spreads not one or two, but 10, 20, even 50 of the precious star books. The soft, papery rustle is the only sound breaking the intense silence. His eyes, sharp and focused, scan the elegant Arabic script. He is not looking for simple omens or divine prophecies. He is searching for something far more profound: cycles. For Ahmed, God's will is not a series of random, capricious acts. He believes it is expressed through a sublime, complex, and beautiful regularity. And to discover that regularity, to map its rhythms and patterns, is to gain a fleeting glimpse into the very mind of the Creator. This is not just scholarship, it is a form of worship, an act of intellectual devotion. His method is nothing short of painstaking. His hands, weathered by the sun and stained with ink, move with a practiced grace between the multiple open manuscripts. His fingers trace lines of ancient text, his lips moving silently as he compares dates, descriptions, and astronomical positions. On a separate wax tablet, his stylus scratches out notes, creating a new layer of data born from the old. It's a scene of intense, quiet cross-referencing, a mental dance across centuries. He sets himself a monumental task: to isolate every single mention of Al-Najem al-Duaba, the hairy star, the comet. These celestial wanderers, with their ghostly tails, have long been seen as harbingers of doom or great change. Ahmed wants to move beyond superstition. He meticulously constructs a timeline, a grand chronicle spanning an incredible 230 years of recorded history. For each and every entry detailing a comet's appearance, he extracts all the companion data he can find. He delves into economic records, noting the harvest yields from the fertile lands along the Niger Bend. He consults the city's archives for the high water marks of the Great River, a vital indicator of prosperity or famine. He pores over civic chronicles, logging periods of epidemic and disease. He even traces the political landscape, recording the reigns and the deaths of the powerful Askia rulers. He is building a database, a complex web of interconnected events, linking the heavens above to the earth below in a way no one has ever attempted before. It is a slow, arduous process, a quest for correlation in a sea of ancient words. Months bleed into one another. The oil in his lamp is refilled time and time again as he works late into the cool desert nights. And then, slowly, like a constellation emerging from the twilight, patterns begin to form. These are patterns invisible to the singular gaze, patterns that only reveal themselves when viewed across the grand sweep of centuries. He notices something truly fascinating, a connection that makes his heart beat faster. On 3 separate occasions, scattered across 2 centuries, the chronicles describe a very specific comet, one noted for its hazy, blue-silver tail. He checks the corresponding data, his hand trembling slightly. In the 2 years following each of these 3 distinct appearances, the records note something remarkable, an exceptional rise in the Niger's flood level. This wasn't a poor flood, which would mean drought, nor was it a normal one. It was an overwhelmingly abundant flood, a deluge of life-giving water that would have dramatically reshaped the year for everyone living along the river. 3 times the comet appeared, and 3 times the river rose to extraordinary heights. A mere coincidence? To the diviners and soothsayers, it would be a simple sign from God. But Ahmed's mind, trained in the rigors of logic and natural philosophy, demands more. It seeks a physical link, a tangible mechanism, not just a mystical one. Could it be possible? Could these celestial visitors, these travelers from the frozen outer darkness of the cosmos, somehow influence the atmospheric currents that bring the vital monsoon rains to the Sahel? He picks up his stylus and, in the margin of his notes, he formulates a tentative theory. A revolutionary thought begins to take shape. He writes, "The vapor of the tail, perhaps, seeds the high winds with a coldness that draws the rain clouds south more forcefully." Now, by our modern scientific standards, his hypothesis is incorrect. We know that a comet's tail, composed of gas and dust, is far too diffuse to have such a direct and dramatic effect on global weather patterns. But that doesn't diminish the magnitude of his achievement. In an age dominated by mysticism, this was a staggering intellectual leap. He was attempting to find a mechanical, a natural explanation for a celestial-terrestrial correlation. He was moving the conversation from the realm of divine whim to the world of predictable, physical processes. He was looking at the cosmos not as a storybook of gods, but as a machine, governed by laws that could be deciphered. His research doesn't stop there. As he continues to sift through his data, he uncovers another, darker pattern. Comets that appeared in the autumn months, a much rarer occurrence, showed a weaker but still noticeable correlation with periods of political instability. Within 3 years of these autumnal comets, there was often a record of royal illness, courtly intrigue, or even outright rebellion. But here, Ahmed's brilliant mind shows its subtlety and caution. He does not leap to the simplistic conclusion that the comet caused the king to fall ill or the kingdom to descend into chaos. Instead, he posits something far more nuanced. He suggests that perhaps both the rare appearance of an autumn comet and the troubles on Earth were symptoms of a wider, intangible phenomenon. He calls it a season of discord, a kind of cosmic imbalance that might affect both the heavens and the affairs of humanity. It's a beautifully complex idea, one that acknowledges a connection without resorting to simple, linear causality. In this moment, Ahmed bin Musa is standing at a profound crossroads in the history of thought. He has one foot planted firmly in the ancient world of divination, a world where the stars are seen as messages, omens sent to guide or warn humanity. But his other foot is stepping into a bold new territory, the world of empirical science. A world where the stars are not just signs, but variables. Variables in a grand, natural equation that, with enough data and careful reasoning, could potentially be solved. In the quiet, dusty library of Timbuktu, under the steady hand of Ahmed bin Musa, the omen is beginning its slow, magnificent transformation into a predictive model. The age-old practice of looking to the stars for answers was not being discarded, but reborn as the foundations of a new, more rational science were being laid, one correlation at a time. The day arrives. Ahmed bin Musa doesn't walk into a king's private chamber to whisper secrets into a royal ear. His audience is far more formidable. He stands in a great hall in Timbuktu, a space that has for centuries been the final destination for caravans of knowledge. A place where ideas, not just goods, are unloaded and examined. Before him sit the ulema, the council of learned men, jurists whose minds are libraries of law, theologians who debate the nature of the divine, grammarians who dissect language to its very atoms, and fellow astronomers who, like him, spend their nights conversing with the stars. He isn't here to deliver a prophecy of doom. He isn't a mystic foretelling a vague, terrifying future. He is a scientist, a scholar, here to present a report of a pattern. He unfurls a large scroll, the culmination of years of meticulous work. There are no mystical symbols, no arcane drawings meant to intimidate. Instead, the scroll is covered in clean lines, organized tables of data, and precise correlations. His voice is clear, steady, grounding every single assertion in the cold, hard evidence of the manuscripts they all know and revere. Consider, he begins, his finger tracing a line on his chart. The blue-tailed wanderer. The name itself sounds poetic, but his analysis is pure data. It appeared in the year of the Hijra 956, again in 1002, and again in 1051. Each appearance, he emphasizes, was followed by a flood that filled the lakes of Debo and inundated the plains of Machina for an extra moon. He lets that sink in 3 times. The correlation is beyond the realm of mere chance. It is a sign, yes, but a sign with a predictable, tangible outcome. He's not just seeing a portent in the sky. He's linking it to a specific, measurable event on the ground. The comet isn't just an omen. It's a herald of high water. Ahmed is a man of deep faith, and he knows his audience. He can feel the unspoken question hanging in the air, the theological concern that he is treading on dangerous ground. He addresses it head-on. Does this mean we replace our trust in God with trust in a star? He asks, his gaze sweeping across the faces of the ulama. Never. His voice is firm. It means we strive to understand the very system through which God's providence often flows. If he sends a herald, a messenger in the sky, to announce a season of abundant water, would we be wise to cower in our homes and simply pray? Or, he leans forward, his argument becoming a plea for reason. Would we be wiser to prepare the irrigation channels, to plan for the storage of the surplus, to thank him for the warning and use the gift he is sending? This is his masterstroke. He's not diminishing faith, he's enhancing it with understanding. He reframes the entire concept. The omen isn't a challenge to God's power. It's a user's manual for divine grace. He isn't removing God from the equation of their lives. He is simply clarifying the magnificent, complex equation that God himself has written across time and space, in the movements of the stars and the cycles of the earth. It's an invitation to be active participants in their own destiny, guided by the signs laid out before them. But he doesn't stop at philosophy. He moves to the intensely practical. He presents his most groundbreaking work, a decision matrix. It is, for all intents and purposes, a sophisticated algorithm born from centuries of compiled data. A set of conditional statements, an if-then guide for governance based on celestial events. He begins to read from it, his voice calm and measured. If a comet appears in the month of Rajab, and its path cuts through the constellation of the Water-bearer, then the following season will be unusually wet. The recommendation: advise the farmers near the inland delta to plant the slow-ripening sanyo rice, which thrives in saturated soil. He pauses, then continues with another example. If a comet with a short reddish tail appears in the hunter's quarter of the sky during the dry season, then pasture will be scarce. The recommendation: increase the granary guards and send envoys to the northern Tuareg tribes to negotiate grazing rights. For tensions may rise with the scarcity of resources. He's transformed the comet from a spectacle into a policy brief. Each appearance, catalogued by its color, tail length, position, and timing, is now linked to a concrete set of actions designed to mitigate risk or capitalize on opportunity. It's a revolutionary fusion of astronomy, agriculture, economics, and diplomacy. A deep silence falls over the whole. But it's not the silence of disapproval or confusion. It is the profound silence of minds being fundamentally reshaped, of paradigms shifting. Slowly, the head Qadi, the chief jurist, a man whose entire life has been steeped in the logic of law and precedent, leans forward. A slow smile touches his lips as the implication of Ahmed's work dawns on him. "You give us fiqh for the heavens," he says, his voice filled with a quiet awe. Jurisprudence based on celestial precedent. He has recognized that Ahmed hasn't abandoned their traditions. He has extended them into a new, cosmic domain. Let's just pause for a moment to absorb how profound this shift is. In this hall, in Timbuktu, the comet has been fully integrated into the apparatus of state. It's no longer just a terrifying, unpredictable symbol that sends people into a panic. It is now a data point, an input in a complex system of risk management and resource planning. The omen has become a forecasting tool. What we are witnessing is the birth of a science. Superstition, that raw, primal fear of the unknown, when subjected to rigorous long-term observation, data collection, and logical analysis, has given birth to a form of proto-science. The terrifying fire in the sky is now a line in a ledger, a variable in a formula for survival, for stability, for prosperity. It's a testament to the power of the human mind to find order in chaos, to turn fear into foresight. Ahmed's work is not just praised, it's accepted. Scribes are tasked with the great honor of copying his scrolls, his charts, his data, his decision matrix. They are added to the immense, sprawling collection of knowledge in the great library of Timbuktu. The comet scrolls of the city are now transformed. They no longer contain just fearful records of past events. They now contain instructions for the future. The sky still speaks in flames. Its celestial messengers still streak across the night. But now, in the quiet, lamplit scriptoria of this desert city, humanity has learned a new skill. They have learned to not just listen in fear, but to reply with preparation. The dialogue between heaven and earth has changed forever. It's no longer a monologue of divine pronouncements, but a conversation, where observation and reason allow humanity to craft its own response. The Mali Empire, at its zenith, was a symphony of gold, faith, and the endless caravan routes that stitched West Africa to the world. In its heart, the capital city of Niani, Mansa Suleiman ruled with a just and steady hand. His reign was a golden age, an extension of the legendary wealth and piety of his predecessor, Mansa Musa. But for Suleiman, the true treasure of his empire was not the gold of the Bambuk mines, nor the salt of Tagaza. It was his firstborn son, Prince Mahmud. Mahmud was the future, forged in the scholarly halls of Timbuktu, where he served as governor. He was beloved by the people, known for his wisdom, his gentle justice, and his deep love for the very libraries that made Timbuktu the intellectual jewel of the Islamic world. He was more than a prince. He was the promise of a peaceful succession, the continuation of a legacy built on learning and faith. He was the sun around which the empire's future orbited. And then the sun went out. The news traveled down the Niger River, a whisper carried first by the swiftest canoe, then passed to the fleetest runner. a relay of sorrow racing towards the capital. The message arrived in Niani on a day heavy with an unnatural stillness, the air thick and silent as if holding its breath. The runner, caked in the dust of the road and the heavier dust of grief, was brought before the Mansa in his grand audience hall. He fell to his knees, his breath coming in ragged bursts. The words he spoke were simple, direct, and they landed with the force of a battering ram. The prince is dead. A fever took him in the night. For Mansa Suleiman, the world didn't just tilt on its axis. It shattered. The carefully constructed future, the neat lines of succession, the legacy he had so meticulously nurtured it, all imploded into a silent, screaming void. He dismissed the court with a wave of his hand, his movements stiff, robotic. The vibrant silks and echoing laughter of his courtiers drained from the hall, leaving him in a sudden, profound emptiness. He retreated to his private chamber. The weight of his magnificent robes, usually a symbol of his power and authority, felt suffocating, an unbearable burden. He let them fall, pooling round him on the cool stone floor. His crown, the symbol of his earthly dominion, was set aside on a low table, its polished gold catching the light with an indifferent gleam. He sat alone on a simple stool, a king dethroned not by rebellion, but by loss. His grief was a private cataclysm, a silent storm raging within the walls of his own heart. A single shaft of afternoon light cut through the dimness, illuminating the dancing motes of dust, each one a tiny, fleeting world, oblivious to the collapse of his own. And it was into this sanctuary of sorrow that the universe chose to send its next messenger. As if intent on carving the king's pain onto the very fabric of the cosmos, a second man arrived. This was not a runner, but an astronomer from the palace observatory, a man of science and stars. His face was pale, his eyes wide with a fear entirely different from the first messenger's grief. He prostrated himself, his voice a hushed whisper that barely disturbed the thick silence. "Great Mansa," he began, his forehead pressed to the floor. "Forgive this intrusion on your sorrow. I would not dare, but the heavens, they have unveiled a new wonder, a sign." Suleiman did not move, his gaze fixed on some unseen point on the far wall. The astronomer took a shaky breath. "A comet, my lord. It appeared last night in the eastern sky. It is brilliant, like nothing we have ever recorded. It bears a tail like a sickle, a sickle." The word hung in the air. The Mansa remained motionless, a statue carved from grief. But behind his unseeing eyes, a new image was forming. He saw it, a blade of cold, celestial fire drawn across the velvet darkness of the night sky. A reaping hook hanging over the world. In the mind of a 14th century ruler, a mind forged in the deeply held belief that the heavens and the earth were mirrors of each other, that the celestial dance directly influenced the fate of mortals. There was no such thing as coincidence. There was only causation. The two events, the death of his beloved son and the sudden, blazing appearance of this new star, were not separate tragedies. They were one. They clicked together in his soul with the terrible, irreversible finality of a lock ceiling, a tomb. His son's life was a star, a bright and guiding light, and it had been extinguished. And now, in its place, a new, angry star flamed to life. The logic, born from the depths of his profound, disordered grief, was inescapable. It was poetic, and it was horrific. The comet did not merely appear, it was sent. It was the weapon. It was the visible manifestation of a divine judgment, a wrathful decree that had struck down his house. The silent, indifferent cosmos was not indifferent at all. It had singled him out. It had personally attacked him, the Mansa of Moli, and it had used a star as its sword. Slowly, deliberately, Mansa Suleiman raised his head. The raw devastation in his eyes had been burned away. In its place was a new light, a cold, hard glitter of terrible understanding. He had been given a sign, and he, the king, had read it. His voice, when he finally spoke, was quiet, yet it seemed to fill every corner of the vast chamber, echoing with a newfound authority. "A sickle, you say?" He repeated, the words tasting like iron in his mouth. "A blade in the sky, at the very hour my harvest is cut down." He rose to his feet. The stoop of his grief was gone, his spine straightened by a new and terrible purpose. The astronomer flinched, sensing the shift in the air, the transformation from a grieving father into something far more dangerous, a king who believed he was at war with the heavens. "The universe has declared its anger," the Mansa announced, his voice ringing with conviction. "It has sent us a message written in fire. We must learn its terms. We must understand the nature of this judgment and what appeasement it demands." The private, personal tragedy of a father's loss was over. In its place, a celestial crisis had been born. The king's grief would no longer be a silent, internal affair. It was about to become the driving force of imperial policy. The Mali Empire, a nation built on trade, scholarship, and faith, was now to be steered by one man's interpretation of a fiery omen in the night sky. Mansa Suleiman, King of Gold and Lord of Niani, would now seek to answer the writ of anger served upon him by the stars, and the fate of his empire would hang on the cosmic bargain he sought to strike. The age of reason was about to be eclipsed by an age of celestial fear. All because a comet's tail looked like a sickle to a grieving king. When grief belongs to a king, it is never just a private sorrow. It isn't simply tears shed in a quiet room. No, a king's grief becomes law. It becomes architecture. It becomes a negotiation with the very heavens. For Mansa Suleiman, ruler of the vast Mali Empire, the comet that blazed across the night sky wasn't just a celestial curiosity. It was the thief that stole his son. And his sorrow, now fused with his awe and terror of this cosmic visitor, hardened into a series of decrees that would shake his empire to its very foundations. Imagine the scene. The air in the capital of Niani is thick with unspoken fear. The brilliant comet hangs overhead, a wound in the fabric of the night. Mansa Suleiman summons his chief priests and master builders. They gather before him, expecting a command for a grand tomb, a monument to a fallen prince. But Suleiman's vision is turned not to the earth, but to the sky. His voice, though strained with grief, carries the undeniable weight of absolute authority. "The wanderer that took my son," he declares, his gaze fixed on some distant point beyond the walls of his palace, "is not evil. It is a power, a jealous, fiery power that must be acknowledged." He points eastward, towards the hill where the comet first made its dramatic appearance. "You will build a temple to it there, not within our city, but on that hill, where it can be seen and where it can see us. It will be a house of calming, a place to soothe its anger. We will give it a name, Alter Alama, the Crimson Flyer, and we will give it offerings." The priests and architects are stunned. Build a temple to a comet, a transient, destructive omen. This is unheard of, bordering on heresy. But the Mansa's will is law, his grief a sacred, untouchable force. And so they obey. Under the hot Mali sun, a unique structure begins to rise. Artisans and masons, men who have built grand mosques and sturdy fortifications, now pour their skill into something entirely new. The design is unlike anything in the empire. It's not a place for people to gather and pray, but a platform for the heavens to observe. The temple is open to the sky, its walls curving upwards like hands in supplication. Instead of a traditional altar, a massive slab of polished black stone, quarried from a distant volcano, is installed. Its purpose, to reflect the night sky, to create a mirror for the comet to gaze upon its own terrible beauty. The windows are not square, but shaped like stars. A gleaming crescent moon, the symbol of the empire, sits atop the highest point, but it seems to bow before the temple's celestial dedication. The offerings are just as strange. There are no animal sacrifices, no offerings of grain or gold. Suleiman understands that a cosmic being has no need for earthly wealth. Instead, the offerings are gestures. They are beautiful, impermanent things. Bolts of the finest, most intricately woven cloth, so valuable they could ransom a nobleman, are brought to the temple and burned. Their smoke, fragrant with dyes, and the skill of the weavers, rises in a pillar towards the sky. Message written in scent and ash. Precious vessels filled with honey and milk are left on the altar, not to be consumed by priests, but to evaporate under the sun's heat and the comet's distant gaze. A sweet offering to the air itself. It is a temple built on a radical new theology, the appeasement of the cosmos, a bribery of the indifferent stars. But Suleiman's decrees don't stop at stone and smoke. His grief radiates outward, touching every single person in his vast kingdom. The second edict is for the people. Town criers, their voices echoing in every marketplace, from Niani to Timbuktu, announce the Mansa's proclamation. Until the crimson flyer leaves our sky, they shout, the kingdom is in a state of celestial mourning. The consequences are immediate and profound. All weddings are postponed. The joy of new unions is deemed inappropriate under the watchful eye of the star that took the prince. All long journeys are forbidden. The roads, usually bustling with merchants and pilgrims, fall silent. Why risk traveling under such an unlucky omen? And most critically, for a commercial empire like Mali, all major trade contracts are suspended. The flow of gold, salt, and goods, the very lifeblood of the empire, slows to a trickle. The social and economic life of one of the world's wealthiest nations grinds to a halt, frozen by the perceived glare of the comet. The sky has imposed a national quarantine, not of the body, but of the spirit. Life becomes a waiting game. People watch the sky, not with wonder, but with a kind of weary dread, praying for the comet to fade, for its tail to shrink, for life to return to normal. The empire holds its breath, united in a state of suspended animation, all under the command of their grieving king. And then comes the third edict. This one is not for the builders or the public. This is for the heart of the dynasty itself. It is the most radical, the most world-altering of all. Suleiman gathers his surviving sons, his brothers, and his most trusted advisors in the throne room. The grand chamber, usually a place of vibrant courtly life, is silent and somber. The Mansa's face is gaunt, the lines of sorrow etched deep into his skin, but his voice, when he speaks, is pure iron. The old way is broken, he states, the words dropping like stones into the silence. The council shifts, uneasy. What can he mean? He continues, the law of the firstborn son. This law made my eldest a target. It invited the anger of the sky to fall upon him. It is a flawed law. He pauses, letting the weight of his heresy sink in. From this day forward, the successor to the throne of Mali shall not be chosen by birth order alone. A collective gasp, silent but felt, fills the room. For centuries, the line of succession has been clear. A straight path from father to eldest son. It's the bedrock of their stability. To question it is to invite chaos, civil war, the ruin of everything they have built. But Suleiman has a new system, one born from a father's desperate attempt to protect his remaining children from the whims of fate. He unveils his plan. Upon the death of a Mansa, he explains, a special council of 7 will be formed. This council will be comprised of the pillars of the empire, the leading Islamic judge, the Cadi of Niani, the commander of the army, the master of the treasury, and crucially, 4 of the most esteemed astrologer priests in the kingdom. This council will review all eligible princes. They will judge their character, their wisdom, their leadership, but their final decision will not be their own. It will be guided by a celestial chart. The astrologers will map the heavens as they are at that moment, and they will compare this map to the natal charts of each prince drawn at the moment of their birth. The prince whose stars show the greatest harmony with the current heavens, whose destiny is written to be most in alignment with the cosmic will, that prince shall be chosen as the next Mansa. Suleiman's eyes, haunted and weary, sweep across the stunned faces of his family and advisors. "We will not fight the stars again," he says, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "We will invite them to choose our king." Let's just pause here and really consider the magnitude of what has just happened. The personal heartbreak of one man, a father, has completely rewritten the constitution of one of the largest and most powerful empires on earth. Succession. The single most critical and volatile question for any monarchy, the question that has torn dynasties apart for all of history, is now no longer a simple matter of inheritance. It is now subject to the impersonal, complex mathematics of the planets. It is a matter for astronomers and mystics. The comet, a mindless ball of ice, rock, and dust, hurtling through the solar system, has, through the lens of a king's grief, become an active political agent. It is the inspiration for new religion, the architect of temples, and now it is the silent, unblinking member of the Royal Succession Council. Mansa Suleiman, in his attempt to make sense of a senseless tragedy, has tethered the fate of his empire not to the laws of men, but to the silent, ever-turning dance of the cosmos. The kingdom of Mali would never be the same. For 72 nights it had blazed across the heavens, a celestial wound in the fabric of the night. The Crimson Flyer, as they called it, was a spectacle, a terror, and a prophecy all at once. And then, as comets do, it was gone. It faded from the sky, shrinking back into the cosmic ocean from which it came, leaving behind only a memory, a story, and a name carved onto a new temple. But the shadow it cast was far, far longer than its fiery tail. For years, even decades, the great Mali Empire would live under that lingering influence, haunted by the ghost of a star. On the eastern hill, overlooking the capital, the Temple of the Crimson Flyer quickly became a site of anxious pilgrimage. It wasn't a place of joyous worship or serene contemplation. Instead, it was a hub of cosmic diplomacy. Here, humans came to negotiate with the heavens. A mother who had lost a child in the fever season would leave a small clay doll, a silent plea. A hunter, preparing to track a rogue lion, would offer a bit of dried meat, asking for a steady hand and a true spear. They weren't praying to a benevolent god. They were appeasing a force they now saw as both immensely powerful and terrifyingly unpredictable. It was as if the entire kingdom was holding its breath, trying not to provoke the sky. This celestial anxiety trickled down into every aspect of life, especially the marketplace. The economy, which had been frozen in fear during the comet's appearance, slowly began to thaw. But it was a fragile recovery. Merchants, once bold in their long-term ventures, grew cautious. Why sign a contract for a caravan that would take 6 months to return when the sky itself could invalidate the deal overnight? A new phrase entered the common tongue, whispered over deals for salt, gold, and textiles. Inshallah, Wallah, Nakt, Olsama, God willing, and if the sky does not spit. It was a testament to a new, shared vulnerability. The empire had learned that all its wealth, all its power, meant nothing against a rock falling from heaven. But the most profound and poisonous change was felt within the golden walls of the royal palace. The new succession law, enacted in a moment of grief and fear by the Mansa, had planted a seed of perpetual tension. Before the comet, the king's sons knew their place, their futures set by the simple, brutal arithmetic of birth order. Now, they lived in a state of suspended political animation. The line of succession was no longer a line at all. It was a chaotic constellation, its meaning subject to the whims of the stars. Each prince became his own silent faction. They studied their horoscopes with a desperate intensity, not as a curiosity, but as a political forecast. They cultivated quiet relationships with the astrologer priests, men who had suddenly become the most powerful advisors in the kingdom. They spent their nights not in camaraderie, but standing apart in the palace courtyards, looking up at the same silent, starry sky. They weren't admiring the beauty of the cosmos. They were searching for signs, for favor, for any celestial hint that might elevate them above their brothers. The comet hadn't just taken a prince. It had injected the poison of permanent uncertainty into the very heart of the royal family. The celestial harmony clause, meant to appease the heavens, had become a perfect recipe for earthly intrigue. Every planetary alignment, every meteor shower, could be twisted and interpreted in a dozen different ways by competing factions. Each desperate to prove their candidate was the chosen one. The brotherhood was broken, replaced by a quiet, calculating rivalry played out against the backdrop of the uncaring stars. And at the center of it all was Mansa Suleiman himself, a king transformed by grief. The vibrant, confident ruler who had expanded libraries, commissioned magnificent mosques, and pushed the empire's trade routes further than ever before. He was gone. In his place was a somber, watchful man. He still governed, and governed well, but the fire in his eyes had been extinguished. His gaze was often distant, turned inward to the memory of his lost son, or upward, forever scanning the twilight for the return of that fiery messenger. His public appearances became less frequent. The grand pronouncements ceased. He became a monarch ruling from the shadows of his own sorrow. In the end, his greatest legacy would not be his conquests, his wealth, or even his piety. It would be his cosmic grief the year the sky killed his son, and in his pain he rearranged the world. And so, the story of the Crimson Flyer was etched into the soul of Molly. It was no longer a simple astronomical event to be recorded by scholars. It became a core chapter in the national epic, a cautionary tale passed down from one generation to the next, around flickering fires and in bustling markets. It was a lesson in the profound vulnerability of even the greatest human power. The Griots, the oral historians of the empire, sang of it in their epic poems. They sang of the golden roofs of the palace, the mighty flow of the Niger River, and the bustling trade cities. But their songs now carried a new, somber verse, a reminder that above all this earthly splendor, above the power of any king or the wealth of any empire, there existed a higher, colder court, a court whose judgments were written in light, and whose messengers came wreathed in unpredictable, world-altering flame. The king's obsession had become the kingdom's trauma, a lesson echoing through time. No matter how high you build your walls, you can never truly escape the judgment of the sky. The great river of time carries us all forward. Empires of sand and gold have long since vanished. Their stories now just whispers on brittle manuscript pages. But some stories endure, held not in ink, but in the living memory of people. The sky, however, remains a constant. Today, we gaze at its mysteries, not with polished obsidian, but through lenses of glass and silicon, not from towers of mud brick, but from silent, orbiting satellites. Our journey takes us to a small village in the savannah of Burkina Faso, where the night sky is so clear the Milky Way looks like a spilled river of diamonds. Here, Dr. Ama Serwa, an astrophysicist from the University of Cape Town, has set up her mobile planetarium. She's not here to teach, but to listen. Beside her, beneath the same ancient baobab tree that has sheltered countless storytellers, sits Baba Kaita. He is a griot, a memory keeper whose family has chronicled the history of this region for longer than any written record. His instrument, the kora, rests against his knee, its large calabash gourd glowing softly in the light from AMA's laptop. Dr. Serwa is on a quest. She's hunting for historical accounts of supernova, the spectacular, violent deaths of massive stars. Modern telescopes can tell her what a supernova remnant is and where it is, but pinpointing the exact date of an explosion that happened centuries ago is incredibly difficult. She turns her laptop screen toward Baba Kaita, revealing a swirling, beautiful cloud of gas and dust. This is the Crab Nebula, the aftermath of a supernova that lit up the daytime sky in the year 1054. Speaking softly in her native tongue, Ama says, "Baba, this is what's left of a star that died a very long, long time ago. It would have appeared as a new, brilliant star in the sky for many moons, and then it slowly faded away." Baba Kaita leans in. His eyes, though clouded by age, are sharp with a lifetime of wisdom. He studies the image of the nebula. He doesn't see astrophysics. He sees a story waiting to be told. For a long moment, he is silent. His fingers drift across the strings of his kora, creating a faint, whispering melody. Then he begins to hum a deep, resonant sound that seems to rise from the very earth beneath them. The humming grows into words, into a song. His voice, weathered by time but still powerful, fills the vast space between the distant stars above and the glowing screen below. He sings of a cosmic drama, a tale passed down through generations. The sister of the sun grew proud, he sings, her silver light too bright, too loud. She challenged the order of the night and burst her heart in jealous spite. For 23 moons her tears fell bright, a second sun to shame the night. Then she faded to a ghostly shell. This is the story the old stars tell. Ama sits perfectly still, her breath caught in her throat. 23 moons. That's just under 2 years. The supernova of 1054 was visible for nearly that long. A second sun, ancient Chinese and Islamic astronomers recorded that the star was bright enough to be seen during the day. A ghostly shell, the nebula on her screen. The song and the satellite data were two different languages telling the exact same story. In that moment, a bridge spanning 1,000 years was built. It connected the cold, hard data from a satellite with the warm, living memory of a singer. It was a powerful reminder that knowledge comes in many forms, and that the oldest stories can sometimes hold the newest truths. This remarkable encounter shows us that science and tradition are not opposing forces. They are simply different paths leading to the same understanding of our universe. The Griot song didn't just add color to the scientific data. It gave it a human timeline, a cultural context that had been lost for centuries. For Dr. Serwa, it was a breakthrough. The oral history provided a crucial piece of the puzzle, helping to confirm and date the astronomical event with greater confidence. This isn't just a story about stars. It's a story about us. It's about how we, as a species, have always looked up at the night sky and tried to make sense of it all. We've told stories, sung songs, and built incredible machines, all in an effort to understand our place in the cosmos. Baba Kaita's ancestors watched a star die and wove its death into their mythology. A millennium later, Dr. Serwa, analyzed its light signature with technology they couldn't have imagined. The legacy of the griots is a testament to the power of human memory. In cultures where history was spoken, not written, these memory keepers were living libraries. Their minds held genealogies, laws, and the epic tales of their people. To lose a griot was to lose a library. What Dr. Serwar discovered was that this library also contained a detailed star chart, a celestial archive preserved in verse. This collaboration between an astrophysicist and a griot is part of a growing movement to reconnect science with indigenous knowledge systems. All over the world, researchers are realizing that traditional ecological knowledge, oral histories, and ancient myths can hold valuable scientific insights about climate change, biodiversity, and even the history of the universe. These are not just quaint folk tales. They are sophisticated systems of observation and knowledge, refined over countless generations. The story of the Crab Nebula, as told by both a satellite and a song, is a beautiful example of what we can achieve when we listen to one another. It proves that the oldest forms of knowledge and the newest forms of technology can come together to paint a richer, more complete picture of our shared reality. The universe speaks in many languages, and to truly understand it, we must learn to listen to them all. Beneath the baobab tree, two worlds converged. The ancient rhythm of the kora blended with the quiet hum of the laptop, creating a new kind of music. It was the sound of discovery, the melody of connection, a harmony 1,000 years in the making. And it reminds us that the quest for knowledge is a journey we all share, written in the stars and sung by the human heart. The collaboration quickly transformed into a shared quest. Amma knew this would take time, so she set up a more permanent camp, a small hub of modern technology nestled within the timeless landscape. Her laptop screen glowed with complex astronomical data, a universe of numbers and charts. Beside her, Baba Keita sat, his mind a living library, a repository of epic cycles, intricate clan histories, and cosmological lore passed down through countless generations. Their work became a delicate, fascinating dance of translation, bridging to worlds of knowledge. Amma would show him her star charts, her finger tracing the familiar patterns of Western astronomy. She'd point to a prominent constellation. But Baba Keita wouldn't say Orion or Taurus. Instead, he'd look at the 3 bright stars of Orion's belt and say, "Those are the 3 hunters, pursuing the bush pig." He'd gesture towards the V-shaped Hyades cluster in Taurus. And that, he'd explain, is the canoe of the first fisherman. With each revelation, AMA would recalibrate her charts, her keyboard clicking as she learned an entirely new celestial language, a nomenclature that had been spoken and sung under these very stars for millennia. She was mapping not just the sky, but the human perception of it. One afternoon, a new idea sparked. AMA played a recording for Baba Keita. It was the voice of another griot, from a different ethnic group hundreds of kilometers away. The song was ancient, its melody haunting. It spoke of a star with a beard of light that appeared when the great king of the Mossy was born. Amma turned back to her digital archives, pulling up royal genealogies painstakingly recorded by French ethnographies during the colonial era. These records, though compiled for different reasons, provided approximate dates for the king's birth. With a time frame established, she queried her database of known comets visible from West Africa. And there it was, glowing on her screen. Halley's Comet. Its appearance in the year 1301 was a perfect match for the era of the king's birth. The song wasn't just a poem, it was a dated celestial observation. But the real earth-shattering breakthrough came from the qualitative details, the nuances woven into the fabric of the stories. Baba Keita shared a song from the Dogon region, a people already famed for their sophisticated astronomical knowledge. The song described a star that walked across the face of the moon. To an astronomer like Arma, this wasn't a vague poetic image. It was a precise description of a specific event, a planetary occultation, where a planet passes directly behind the moon from an observer's perspective. The song even gave clues. By identifying the star as likely being Venus or Jupiter, the brightest objects that wander the sky, and using the detailed description of its path from the lyrics. Arma's software could work its magic. It ran astronomical models backwards in time, searching for the exact date when such an event would have been visible from that specific location in the Dogon country. The computer churned through centuries of celestial mechanics. Then Baba Kaita added the final, crucial piece of the puzzle. The story says it happened in the dry season. He recalled when the Harmattan wind was blowing the dust from the desert. This seasonal anchor, this small detail preserved in memory, narrowed the software's search from countless possibilities to a specific window of a few months. The computer found it. A single, verifiable date, hundreds of years in the past. Piece by piece, anecdote by anecdote, song by song, they were building an entirely new kind of historical record. It became clear that the oral traditions were not vague myths or fanciful fairy tales. They were eyewitness accounts, encoded in the powerful mnemonic devices of poetry and rhythm to ensure their survival and accurate transmission across generations. The story of the ghost star that wept light for a generation was no longer just a legend. It became the supernova of 1006, the brightest stellar event in recorded human history, observed and recorded by cultures all over the world, including, it turned out, the ancestors of Baba Ka, the fire-haired spirit that returned when the baobab by the river split in two was pinned to the return of a specific, periodic comet. Its appearance was linked to a memorable local environmental eventatory, splitting which also entered the oral record, creating a cross-reference point in time. Let's just pause for a moment and picture their shared workspace. Imagine the scene. The kora, the ancient harp lute of the yacht, its strings holding centuries of history, leans against the sleek, metallic tripod of a digital spectrometer, a device designed to analyze the composition of distant stars. It's a profoundly powerful image of synthesis, of a bridge being built across time and disciplines. And the scientists' tools, the laptops and databases and algorithms, were providing the decryption key. They weren't using science to validate myth, as if one were superior to the other. They were demonstrating that they had been two sides of the same coin all along. Two parallel, equally valid ways of observing, recording, and understanding the profound, unbreakable relationship between humanity and the cosmos. Every new connection felt like a discovery for both of them. One day, Baba Kaita sang about a time of two suns in the sky, a story that spoke of confusion and awe. While a literal second sun is impossible, Amar considered the possibilities. A particularly brilliant daytime meteor, a parhelion, or sundog, a common atmospheric phenomenon. The story's details about the time of day and the position of the second sun allowed her to cross-reference it with atmospheric science. The Griot's narrative wasn't just a story. It was a meteorological report, passed down through song. Another time, a tale mentioned a year where the river flowed backward. This seemed like pure fantasy, until Amma collaborated with a geologist. They found that a specific type of seismic event upstream, a landslide creating a temporary dam, could cause a river to appear to reverse its flow for a short period. By matching the story to geological records of seismic activity in the region, they could pinpoint a probable date for the event. The history wasn't just in the sky. It was written on the land, and both were stored in the songs. Amma realized she was decolonizing her own scientific perspective. Her training had taught her that written records and empirical data were the gold standard of truth. But here, truth was fluid, lyrical, and alive. It existed in the relationship between the singer and the listener, in the rhythm of a drum that mimicked the cycle of the seasons. Baba Keita, in turn, was fascinated by Amma's tools. He peered at the screen as she showed him a simulation of a planetary orbit, a swirling digital dance that mirrored the cosmic dances described in his epics. He saw her software not as a cold machine, but as a new kind of storyteller, one that spoke in a language of light and gravity. He began to see the patterns in his own stories in a new light, recognizing the astronomical precision hidden within the poetic metaphors. Their project was no longer about one discipline explaining the other. It was about creating a richer, more complete picture of the past. The Griot tradition held the cultural and human context, the meaning of these celestial events. It told them how people felt, what they believed, how a comet's appearance influenced a king's decisions, or how a meteor shower was interpreted as a message from the ancestors. Amma's science provided the framework of time and space, the what and the when. Together, they were resurrecting history in its fullest sense. A history with both a body and a soul. The data points on AMA's charts now had stories attached to them. Stories of fear, wonder, and celebration. And the ancient songs of Baba Keita were now anchored to specific, verifiable moments in the history of the universe. They were proving that the oldest form of human record-keeping and the most modern could speak the same language, revealing a shared human legacy of looking up at the sky and wondering. Imagine a scientific paper quietly landing in the prestigious journal Nature Astronomy. Its title is unassuming, correlating oral historical narratives from West Africa with transient astronomical phenomena. Mi 800 CE. But the authors listed are what truly makes you pause. Dr. Ame Serwa and Baba Keita, Master Griots of the Keita lineage. For the scientific community, this paper was a bombshell. It wasn't just another study. It was a revelation of an entirely new dataset, hidden in plain sight for centuries. Think about it. Precise dates for long past astronomical events suddenly unlocked from ancient stories. These dates allowed scientists to recalibrate their models of stellar evolution, to better understand how often stars explode as supernova right here in our own cosmic backyard. Suddenly, Dr. Amaserwa was in high demand. She was invited to speak at conferences from Cape Town to Cambridge, not just to talk about stars, but to share something even more revolutionary. A new methodology for collaboration. A bridge between modern science and traditional knowledge. Behind her, as she spoke, a powerful image would often appear on the screen. On one side, the beautiful, intricate gas clouds of the Crab Nebula, the remnant of a star that exploded in the year 1054. On the other side, a portrait of Baba Keita, his eyes closed in concentration, singing the history of his people. While scientists were buzzing about this new data, the impact on the Griot communities was just as profound, though in a very different way. Baba Keita, who had only recently gotten used to his new smartphone, found it ringing off the hook. It wasn't just astronomers anymore. Historians were calling, archaeologists, even climate scientists. They all had the same question. Baba Keita, do your stories speak of the great droughts? Do they remember the long migrations? Do they describe the years when the sun set in a blaze of volcanic fire? The status of the Griot a role already deeply respected, began to shift. They were no longer seen simply as keepers of culture, but as fellow scholars, as guardians of a vast, unwritten library of empirical history. In the village, the young people started looking at Baba Kaita with a newfound awe. They realized his songs weren't just beautiful melodies passed down through generations. They were true. They contained data, facts that the modern world, with all its technology, was just now beginning to understand and value. His voice carried not just the soul of a people, but the memory of the sky itself. This incredible collaboration was just the beginning. Inspired by the success, AMA helped establish a groundbreaking project, the Skyward Memory Initiative. This wasn't a one-off study, it was a movement. Across the entire African continent, astronomers began forging partnerships with elders, storytellers, and traditional knowledge keepers. They traveled to the Kalahari Desert to listen to the Sand People, whose ancient stories spoke of the dawn stars, possibly referring to Venus and Mercury in ways science hadn't considered. They sat with Swahili coastal elders, whose ancestors navigated the vast Indian Ocean not with compasses, but with star paths woven into epic poems and songs. What they were uncovering was a lost layer of human observation, a heritage of scientific inquiry that predated the telescope by millennia. We often hear about ancient kings and their fear of comets, but that was just the tip of the iceberg. What was emerging was a deep, continent-wide tradition of meticulous sky-watching. Every new star, every unexpected meteor shower, every strange celestial event was noted, discussed, and carefully woven into the fabric of history, culture, and identity. This wasn't a condescending salvage operation where modern scientists swoop in to save old stories. It was a true partnership, a closing of a circle that had been broken for centuries. The telescope gazes into the deep past of the universe, billions of years ago. The griot's song holds the deep past of human witness, of our ancestors staring up at that very same sky. Together, they are finally writing a fuller, more complete story of our cosmos, and our place within it. The fire in the sky that once made kings tremble has now become a data point, a flicker of light in a vast spreadsheet. But through this incredible new chapter of discovery, the awe remains. The wonder is still there. The ancient conversation between humanity and the cosmos. A conversation that may have begun with a whispered prayer on a Kushite rooftop thousands of years ago is continuing. It's being spoken in a new, collaborative language. A language that blends the precision of science with the poetry of oral tradition. And it's all happening under the same, endless, magnificent African sky. Thanks for watching. The fire has long since faded from the sky. The crimson flyer is dust. The brilliant sister of the sun is now just a faint, expanding cloud. The royal astronomers of Kush, the scholar scribes of Timbuktu, the grieving Mansa of Mali, they have all returned to the earth that sustained them. Their bones have mingled with the soil over which they once watched. With such fear and wonder, a celestial drama unfold. So, after all this time, what remains of their obsession? Come, sit one last time with me under the broad embrace of our baobab. Look up. The stars are the same. The darkness between them is just as deep and just as silent. But if you listen with more than just your ears, you might hear the echo of an ancient conversation. It's a dialogue that has stretched across centuries, connecting us to those who came before. You see, the kings and scholars of old weren't just obsessed with fear. They were obsessed with meaning. In the sudden, fiery streak of a comet, they saw a crack in the predictable, rhythmic order of their world. And into that crack, they poured all their human questions about power, about legacy, about the favor of the unseen. The comet became a blank scroll, and upon it they inscribed their deepest anxieties and their most profound hopes. It became a mirror, reflecting not the cold, distant reality of an icy wanderer, but the hot, beating heart of human consequence. They were, in their own way, the first scientists of the soul, searching for a system where none was immediately apparent. Think of the Timbuktu scholars, with their parallel columns meticulously charting the movements of the stars alongside the cycles of the soil. They were building a bridge, a connection between the observable and the divine, desperately seeking the pattern within the chaos. Consider the grieving king, rewriting his laws in the wake of a cosmic event. He was attempting to negotiate with the universe itself, to find a rulebook that might prevent such cosmic cruelty from ever touching his house again. Of course, their methods were framed in the language of their time. They spoke of omens, divine wrath, and celestial harmony. But their impulse, their core drive, was profoundly human, and in its own context, profoundly rational. They wanted to understand cause, to predict effect, and to find a small place of safety and predictability in a vast and often terrifying cosmos. They were trying to make sense of it all, just like we do today. And now, in our own age, the circle completes itself. The modern satellite and the ancient song find their harmony. The Griot's epic poem and the astrophysicist's complex graph both point to the very same moment of stellar death. That ancient, meticulous watching, the obsession that drove kings and compelled scribes, is finally vindicated. It wasn't mere superstition, but a valid, crucial form of data collection carried out over generations. The stories they told were the hard drive. The stars themselves were the event. The true legacy of those ancient watchers is not a list of correct predictions or what we might now call foolish fears. It is the legacy of looking up. It is the simple, powerful acknowledgement that our small stories, playing out on this small world, are part of a much, much larger narrative. That comet was the punctuation in a grand cosmic sentence, an exclamation mark of pure awe, a question mark of deep dread, a comma that prompted a long pause for reflection. So, as you leave this quiet space under the baobab, I want you to carry this with you into your own night. The next time you see a shooting star blaze across the darkness, or watch the silent, steady march of the planets, or just notice the slow, majestic wheeling of the constellations, remember that you are part of an unbroken line of watchers. You are the inheritor of that ancient, beautiful obsession, the distinctly human need to find our own story written in the stars. It's the need to feel, even for just a moment, that the cosmos is not indifferent, but is in a silent, fiery, magnificent dialogue with the brief, precious flicker of our lives. The fire is gone, but the wonder remains. Thank you for joining me on this journey. You are now, and always, under baobab skies. Don't forget to look up